Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Kym Tolson. I'm the clinical consultant for product development for Berries, and I'm also the founder of Bill Like a Boss, a membership community that teaches therapists how to bill insurance in their private practices. Berries and Bill Like a Boss decided we would team up and bring you guys credentialing for private practice success. So we're here joined with Annie Day and Dawna Haswell. They're the two certified billers that run Bill Like a Boss. And we also have Tal, the co-CEO of Berries, here with us today. We're so excited to have you guys and offer this for free. And eventually you'll get another email saying that you'll be able to get a CE for this too. So we're super excited about that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Thank you so much, Kym. So to kind of go ahead and just, I know Kym, some of you know us, some of you may not. So just to kind of introduce ourselves. So I'm Dawna Haswell, and I am an LCSW, and I actually have a group practice. And on the side, we also run a billing company and agency. And I will let Amy introduce herself.
Yeah. So I joined A New Dawn, A New Beginning in July of 2020. So just hit 6 years, and kind of started working a little bit backwards, kind of working on the more admin and billing type. I'm also a registered intern at A New Dawn, A New Beginning, and we are the admin team for Bill Like a Boss. So we have learned a lot from our own kind of trials and tricky situations, but also being able to learn a lot from you guys. And so not only do we help therapists and billers and admin learn how to do some of these things themselves, but we also offer kind of coaching and these services as well. So wear a lot of different hats and kind of like done and seen a lot, from a lot of those just different roles. So one of the things that we wanted to kind of like give you guys today was no matter where you're at in that process, if you're thinking about doing this in the future, if you find yourself in the middle of this, or if you say like, hey, I have contracts and maybe I have questions about those, you will get some valuable information today.
So we are definitely excited. And one of the things that we'll definitely try to do, so we also use Berries. So if we can give you some tips in there on how this works,
sure,
we're definitely going to throw that in there as well. So
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of try to simplify some of the language that insurance companies are going to use, because that means that you and the insurance company, as much as you can be, are on the same page. The more that we can speak the same language, the less confusion and the less complications that we see later on. So when we think about credentialing, it is a process. And a lot of times I think providers think it's just maybe like a one-time process, or it's something you did in the very beginning, or we have some say, I did that years ago. We want to kind of like walk you through every piece of that just to make sure that from beginning, middle, and end, that you guys kind of like simplify that system to avoid any delays, any complications. So when you think about credentialing, that's kind of a word that insurance companies came up with to say, you're telling me this information, I need to know who you are. So one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to verify that. They want to know, do you have the license that you tell me that you do? Do you have the training? Have you done the appropriate steps for insurance, for malpractice? Did you get the education? All of those things. Basically, they'll want to know, are you an appropriate provider to list in our network? Because from their point of view, like they're going to allow their members to see you for services, bill for services, different things like that. So a lot of times people think like, hey, I did the credentialing, I submitted that, like I'm good to go. This is going to vary. Yes. States are going to vary, different insurance payers are going to vary, different times of the year that you submit your application are going to vary for that. So if you are doing that yourself, if someone else is doing that for you, definitely knowing like the terminology there. So again, people think like, hey, I'm new, I'm totally on my own, I have to get all these insurances. That is a goal, of credentialing, is to get on panels, but it's not the only goal. This is kind of like the first step in that process.
One thing that I always like to kind of think of it as is like, I'm applying for a job.
Sure.
So when I'm applying for a job, what is it they're going to need? And they're going to need the same thing. And so we're applying to see if this is something, if a relationship that we can work together on. And so that's kind of in my mind how I think of that.
Yeah. So once they verify you, right, they say, hey, Dr. Jane Doe, you are who you say you are. Then they're going to go through a process of actually approving you or not. If they've let you submit a credentialing application, they're open, they're not paused, they're not limiting. Normally that's a good sign. Once you get to the approval part, that's where it's kind of hurry up and wait, check in and wait kind of thing. That's where your timeline is kind of like dependent on them. If they meet once a month, that they meet every 90 days, if they have to meet as a committee at all, you're kind of at their mercy. In this process, though, there are definitely things that you can do to not just have to wait completely at their mercy. They should give you a timeline. So if they say, hey, we have your application, you've moved to the contracting phase, or we're waiting for your approval, I definitely ask. Because if I'm looking at 30 days, okay, I can expect that pretty quickly. If they say, hey, this can take up to 120 days, I probably don't want to put it on my calendar to call every 30 days. I may push that out to 60, or I may push that out to 90. Definitely kind of like having some sort of timeline or some sort of kind of like estimate can definitely help create a little bit less work for you, because we always want to work smarter, not harder, because we are working hard enough. Absolutely. The last piece I think too that clinicians can sometimes miss is like they've done their application, they have their effective date, but then there's kind of like a wait, what do I do now? And this is where you definitely want to kind of like do the front load work of making sure that your system is ready. So that way everything, basically you want your system up and running and just waiting for you.
Absolutely. And one of the things too is, so I know like when you get that approved letter and you're like so excited because like finally, like I can actually start doing this. Check the date. So sometimes it will be a past date, which is phenomenal. Sometimes it's going to be like 3-6 months in the future. And so a lot of times we see that, we get really excited, we start scheduling people, and then we have to wait because we're actually not in network just yet. So please, please, please make sure that you are paying attention to that date.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. And then kind of also like what Annie was saying there towards the end is like setting up your system, because I think however you're going to do that, like if you're using a specific EHR, or if you're going to like have some sort of hybrid, this is something that if you can like just do some practice runs, like when you're ready, then you can actually just go ahead and get started. Then a lot of back end work comes with that, and you just don't realize it because there's little clicks and buttons and all of this stuff in the EHRs that you may forget to click, and then that doesn't send through, and it's a lot. So just making sure that you test run that as well.
Yes, for sure. So again, kind of like breaking up these 3 steps of that process will definitely kind of help you understand not only where you're at, but what the expectation is. Credentialing is gathering that information, it's submitting that application, whether that's you or having someone else do that for you, and kind of like following up if they are asking for anything else. Essentially, kind of like credentialing is going to answer the question, are you qualified to join the network? So sometimes that's even knowing too, like what their requirements are before you go through that. Some states and some insurances will allow like associate level or provisionally licensed clinicians. A lot don't. And so sometimes information kind of like is put out there like, hey, I was able to do this in Oregon. And so then, a provisionally licensed or associate licensed in Florida says, oh, that's great, let me go do that. And now we've wasted kind of some time gathering the information and submitting it for them to go, hey, like that's not even possible. Right. I know like for us in Florida, our Blue Cross Blue Shield currently is closed. So knowing that kind of going into it, again, it's just going to help you kind of understand what panels are even open, which ones am I qualified to join, and kind of like going through that process to actually submit. Another thing here, like with Blue Cross Blue Shield and some of your other states, knowing what that third party is. A lot of times, insurance companies use third parties to credential. A lot of them use Carelon. A lot like ours uses Lucid. And so knowing not only for that contracting piece and that credentialing piece at the beginning, but also like for member services later on. So definitely knowing what this is, who I actually submit to, doing that front load work saves you times and headaches and wasted applications and things in the future.
And kind of going along with Annie saying to that, I think that can be really confusing at first. So I remember like applying and I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm applying for United Healthcare.
Mhm.
And then I'm getting emails from some place called Optum. And I'm like, who's
Yeah.
Optum? Right. So like being able to connect, like who's actually over the
Yeah.
credentialing and who's over the mental health side, so you know who to ask questions to.
Yeah, for sure. And knowing that the credentialing piece, you are in control of that as much as you can be. That's where, hey, I'm doing the work here. I'm providing the documents, I'm submitting the applications, I'm kind of following up to make sure they're not asking for anything during that process. Then when you hit step 2, that's kind of like where you've handed that ball off to the insurance company. That's where it's up to their timeline, whatever that process can look like for them, basically to then give you a contract that,
yes,
it's very long.
It's very long
and written in legalese, but it's very important because that's where you look at, this is what they're offering. This is kind of my job offer, to use, the metaphor from earlier. Can I do this? Is this a rate I'm willing to accept? Am I going to be able to do their timely filing setup? Are there going to be site visits and things like that, that can come with some Medicaid things? Basically, the insurance company is going to look at everything you've given them to give something back to you and go, okay, is this something that I'm going to sign to? Is this something that realistically is going to work for me in my practice? Credentialing and contracting, like Dawna mentioned earlier, there are very specific dates that you want to pay attention to. Because I may have a fully executed contract August 13th, but I may not be loaded in their system to bill until September 1st. That is why we, with as much as you can, a fine-tooth comb, top to bottom, go through that contract to know exactly when you're ready, what you're kind of like being ready for. Knowing what the rules are for them, because even commercial insurances are going to have their little nuances and their little differences. The rates, you guys know, are here, there, and everywhere.
Yes.
But also, when does that start?
And I think to kind of add to that as well, on the therapy side of that, you also want to know what is the requirements for their notes, for their assessments. And I will be very honest, like that has been changing so much in the last year that, being able to keep up with that. Like some of them may want you to use a PHQ-9. Somebody may want, quarterly recommendations sent to the PCP. Like there's different things written in those contracts that it's really important for you to be able to read and make sure that you can abide by those things as well. And then the other side to this point too is that sometimes you may get a letter back after this that says, hey, actually we're closed. So they may have been open, they may have started this, and before they approved you get a letter saying that they're closed. And so to be honest, like, Annie and I always recommend calling the insurance and specifically asking for mental health, behavioral health, and saying, are you open? Because that can literally change like in a matter of a day. So just being able to. And
granted, a 20, 30, 45 minute, even hour long phone call, even if I'm on hold for a lot of that and can multitask in between there, that can save me hours of finding the information, making sure I have everything, and then putting that into there. Then your enrollment setup. That is whatever.
So you do get approved.
Yes. Yeah.
You get approved and you get to go.
Yes. You have your approval date. You have your effective date. They say, hey, you are ready. Congratulations.
You agree to all of their things.
Yes, I can do this. This is where you want your system ready for you. I will say that a lot of the EHRs that we've seen lately do a pretty good job of at least being able to kind of like easily set up your system to submit claims out. A lot of those like simple practice and therapy notes, even like intake queue and, some of Jane sessions. I know that's a big one now. Those are pretty easy. You're clicking some buttons, but a lot of times providers forget to do that until now that person is sat in your office and you've done the session and you've provided that service and you're like, wait a minute, I have this claim and I don't know what to do with that. So definitely doing that on the front end kind of sets a very well-oiled system up to be ready to just run from there. The ERA enrollments, sometimes those take a little bit more, like you're having to put some information in. Again, they're a lot easier than they were in 2020. They require a lot less as long as the information is there. But definitely knowing, like for United, that I'm going to have a Provider Express portal. for Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm going to run that through Availity, knowing what each kind of piece is for that and being able to put that in one place is going to help you, because it's not an if, it's a when.
Yes.
You know, something comes up and you're going to have to check that. You know exactly where to go. The whole reason that we kind of like harp on this is because if you don't set this up correctly from the beginning, that interrupts your cash flow.
Yes.
That interrupts claims from being able to go to the right place, and then that payment to be able to come back to you in the right way. So we have a lot of providers that say, hey, I know the claim's there. I can see that it's paid. I have no idea where that money went.
Yes.
And you know, so how did you set that up?
Yes.
That's where this piece is so important, because if you don't want paper checks, which in 2026, really, who wants paper checks? That's where, like, I know, like, I at least know where to look. So that way, if they're saying something is paid and I can't find that, then I can make sure that I fix that quickly. So I don't have payment issue upon payment issue. And now I'm 4 to 6 weeks in, or 4 to 6 sessions in, and I don't know where that money went.
Yeah. And the same thing can also apply of you're getting money in your bank account and you have no idea who they're paying for.
Yeah.
And so just making sure that you know, like, hey, this is where my claims are coming in, like going out, and then my ERAs are coming in, and I can check that. And so a term that you may hear sometimes is people may say a clearinghouse, and that's kind of like that portal of things going in and out for your finances and your claims.
Yeah, because bulk checks and bulk payments are lovely, but you got to know who's in there. So this is another thing that you will hear Dawna and I and Kym as well kind of like harp on, is take the time to do your research before you start this. With our billing company, a lot of times we have to do a lot of cleanup, and it is much easier to kind of find how you want to do this, especially thinking long term, and set that up that way to then just maintain contracts rather than have to change contracts. Speaking of ourselves, you know, like even address changes. I was like, listen, Dawna Haswell, I will do whatever you tell me to, but I will celebrate if we do not have to change an address. So thinking about kind of like even long term, even like we have clinicians say like, hey, I maybe want to grow, but I'm nowhere near that. If you think that could ever be a possibility, go ahead and do the work from the beginning. Yes. A lot of times, like the tax ID, the NPI2, those are free. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. It's pretty easy to fill out those forms. It's also kind of timely coming back to you. It's not like you have to do this and then you're waiting to get that information back in 3 months. So go ahead and do that, and think long term, even from the beginning. Even if you say, hey, like, I don't ever want to grow. I only want to ever to just be me. There are practical kind of like implications for doing that from the get-go. So one of the things that we always suggest is to have an EIN. I know with like the CAQH thing coming out, you know, there was a lot of information about access to your information. I mean, I don't want anyone really to have my social security number. So if I can put an EIN out there or a tax ID, I'm kind of like putting one more layer of protection between me and insurance panels for a lot of different things, for payment information, for provider directories. Basically, I'm going to tell that insurance company, how I'm going to want them to pay me. Do I want them to pay me directly? Do I want them to pay my business? Also, how I'm going to be listed. Like, do I want just my name out there? Do I want a business out there? Thinking about kind of like structurally different layers of liability protection I can give myself is going to save you like in the long term.
Yeah. And again, like when you're thinking of that business identity, I always think of it as, how am I going to portray this to not just insurance companies, but to my clients as well? Sure. And I say that because sometimes if there are sometimes they may request like certain super bills or things like that. And some of them want a tax ID number on that. Sure. And if your tax ID is like your social security number, like that gets kind of weird. And like, you have to figure out how to like navigate that and not necessarily hand that out. So thinking of like business identity of like, how do you want to be represented and identified to your clients and to the insurance companies? Yeah. And also even your mailing address.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a P.O. box, and I started it from the beginning. That is one thing I didn't do very right the first time. And part of that is literally because if anybody's looking up anything, they were going to see my home address for everything. And so being able to have one spot that my mail goes to, that even if we change location, my mail can still always go to that P.O. box. So I know sometimes they don't allow just a P.O. box, but I will say that is something that has been very, very handy.
Yeah, for sure. Thinking about your clinician readiness, there is a lot to be said. Like if I can gather all of this information first, and maybe I have an overabundance of information, I would rather be more prepared and do an application and go, oh, I didn't even need that, than get halfway through and go, oh my gosh, I need this, and now I have to order this.
Yes.
Or I don't know where to find this, or I can't remember my login for the system that I used 5 years ago to find that. So doing that part from the beginning also will save you some time. One of the things that we actually just came across was if your liability, like Dawna's liability insurance, literally redid yesterday.
Yes.
So if I'm submitting an application for her on the 12th, I'm not going to use a liability insurance that expires on the 12th. So just kind of thinking through, like if I have an, liability that expires 10 days after I'm going to submit that, I may hold off. Thinking about different things, like if I'm moving in the middle of this, or if I say, hey, like I can go ahead and do 2 insurance contracts, but the third one I'm going to have to make this easier for yourself. Yes. Again, work smarter, not harder.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also remember too, like having the clean resume. If you have like gaps, they actually do want to know. There's some insurance companies that do question like kind of what happened and where were you, and
they want like a letter.
Yes.
Like that can't just be like a, hey, let me just type in this empty box here. They're wanting like some sort of official document stating like whatever that reason was, whether that was school or whatever that reason was for that gap in there. Also knowing that like that's kind of up to them. So just know that like kind of as you're going into that, again, you're submitting that to that insurance company.
One of the things that Annie and I do to kind of like have our little cheat sheet is that whether it's for us or we're doing it for someone else, like we literally have a cheat sheet that has all of this information right there, and right in their Google folder, all of these things. So it does not matter what insurance company is asking for. Like we have the sheet with all the numbers and we have all the supporting documentation, and that's been extremely helpful.
And basically when we've added to that is we've literally gone to whatever application that we did that required the most. Like even if I say, hey, Medicaid asked for this one thing, I don't think any commercial insurance is going to ask her that. We've added that box as we've gone on. And so like, as you're doing those applications, if you have one that said, hey, actually, we want your transcripts, but we also want a picture or a scan of your diploma, just go ahead and add that in there. Kind of making sure that like you've been able to stabilize that information. One thing there that I will say is your credentialing contact details. Make sure that even if you're using like a third-party company or you've had someone that's done that before, that you know who that person is.
Yes. Because
when we think about re-credentialing, or when we think about like you've submitted everything, but maybe something out of your control did expire and then you had to update that, that's where they're going to ask for that information from. So just make sure that you know who that person is and that you have access to that person.
And if it's you, make sure that you know as well to look for that. I know sometimes when you have other people do that, they may put your information down and then just say, hey, let me know if you get anything and send it to me.
Right.
And if you miss something and there's a timeline, then sometimes you have to start the application all over.
Yeah.
So just making sure that that is a conversation that you're having ahead of time of like, who's going to be the credentialing contact? And if it is me, what do you need as the biller? What do I need to send to you? And what am I even looking for?
Yeah. And knowing those emails, like a lot of times, like, hey, I'm the credentialing contact, but it's a personal email when I was looking in my work email. So just kind of like knowing who is looking where for what and what that timeline is.
Then the NPI.
Yeah. So I will say, I don't think I've ever had a provider come and say, I got the NPI too. I used it for my credentialing and I wish I wouldn't have.
Right.
Like that just, maybe it happens and we just haven't, like,
knock on wood.
Yes. But that's not happened. One thing I will say is knowing like as you're going into this process, if you're going to do Medicare or you're going to do certain commercial insurances, they may actually require that. So like, I'll give you an example. We had a provider who is solo, still is solo, is probably always going to be solo. So had her MPI 1 on all of her contracts, which was fine. That was how everything was set up. It was running, it worked. But then about 3 years in, wanted to take Medicare. And then Medicare required the type 2 MPI. And so that we were at a crossroads, really. Do we update all of these contracts, or do we just have this one run separately and then create a billing cheat sheet? So just knowing that, like, as much as you can streamline from the beginning, if I'm only doing 4 contracts and I can go ahead and set all of them up with a type 2 MPI, it doesn't really matter what I add later. The rest of my systems from this, credentialing, re-credentialing, my listings, my billing is going to run the same way. And if you can streamline something, we're always going to advocate for you to streamline that. It just creates a lot less confusion and issues later on. Yep.
And one thing to also remember is that insurance companies are going to tie your NPI to your tax ID. And so let's say that I'm a clinician that works for 3 different agencies. So my NPI could technically be matched to 3 different tax ID numbers. And I say that because sometimes, and Annie has run into this, is just because maybe my NPI is matched to the tax ID number for New Dawn, New Beginning, that doesn't mean that I'm automatically credentialed with the tax ID number for like Kym and her agency. That does not mean that. So when you are thinking of this, your NPI and your tax ID are credentialed for that contract. That doesn't mean you can just go somewhere else just because you have a Blue Cross Blue Shield number with your NPI.
Yeah. So CAQH, this is a great tool because it is an online portfolio for you to throw those things in there. Your liability insurance that renews every year, that, oh my gosh, yep, I have mine set up on auto pay, so I don't even have to think about it. But like, as you're getting those, throw those in there. Essentially, that's where, instead of maybe before where you had to gather paper copies and scan and mail in, this is an online version that you can keep all of this. Also, that some insurance companies are going to access. If you have done a United application, they're easy if your CAQH is up to date, because you create your account, you log in, you say exactly what you want to do, and then it starts spinning. And it spins for 3 or 4 minutes because it actually real time goes into your CAQH, and then it populates that application with that information. So again, if CAQH is great, to me, that's the easiest one. Where I see and where I hear and where I've even myself logged into this and seen, oh my gosh, like an agency 4 years ago still has access to that, and they had their agency listed as my primary, address. So go here first. I will say start here. Make sure that the information is here. Make sure it's attested. Make sure it has the most up-to-date information. Even if you've put that liability information in that first piece, if you don't update and you don't upload that second document there, it's going to be errors there, and it's going to give you errors here on these applications. So knowing kind of like the purpose of this will also kind of like help know where to start to, again, save yourself some time and frustration and mistakes later on.
And I think too, also just from my own experience, so at first I did not do my CAQH. I worked for an agency and they did it for me, and I didn't even know what CAQH was. And so then when I went on my own, I was like, first of all, I didn't even know how to get into it. So that was a whole battle to figure that out. But then once I got into it, a lot of their information was still there. And so because I was working for them part-time, they kept going in and putting their stuff as primary. And so as I was like trying to credential, it was like throwing off all of my stuff. So if you are working for multiple people, or you're working somewhere and you're trying to go out on your own, like, you need to have access to this, and you need to be able to manage like who's going where, what's my primary, what's my secondary, like how do I need to insert that.
Yeah, and you can allow access to, you know, a lot of different things in here, but you definitely want to be kind of like the custodian of that knowledge of what that login information is, what is primary, what is still in there. If I've left one, I definitely want to archive those things. Like you want this to be real time, what information is actually accurate in this moment for you. Also, I will say before starting this process, thinking about, and again, this is kind of like provider by provider, case by case scenario, thinking about what is my actual goal here. A lot of times we have, you know, clinicians say, hey, like I'm in a group practice, I'm slowly transitioning, I just want to add one at a time. That is a fantastic model.
Yes.
We have some, and we've probably been there before, and you guys probably have too, that you just don't have the capability to do that. Like you've left, or you've started out on your own, or, you know, something changed in your area and now you're having to add them. And so you're kind of throwing the net out there. Just know that like what your goal is here. More panels are not just, you know, always the better fit. You know, a lot of times we have clinicians say, yeah, like I'm a network with everything. And they find themselves somehow listed under like a Medicare or a Medicaid underneath an insurance that's kind of like main umbrella, like United, but they don't have a Medicaid number, or they don't have a Medicare number, or that PTAN expired, so that needs to be updated. So just know for some people, it is like, I just got to throw the net out there. I got to get what I can. Just know that like the more insurances that you do panel with also means kind of more things to keep up with, and kind of like creating those cheat sheets to know exactly what that means for each of those.
Absolutely.
So there are a couple of things that we always suggest starting with before you go there. Fairhealthconsumer.org is a fantastic resource. It is free. You can put in your CPT codes, you can put in your zip codes, and it gives you sort of an idea of what those insurance in-network reimbursements are going to be. Again, it's an average. It'll also give you some out-of-network kind of information there too. So a lot of times providers say like, hey, I got this contract. This is the first one I've ever seen. Is this a good rate? Is this a bad rate? This is a good place to go to verify that. A lot of times we have clinicians say, hey, I'm brand new.
Yeah.
All I have is my tax ID, have an address. I don't even know what to set for self-pay. Again, this is a place that you can go. So I will say www.fairhealthconsumer.org. I wish I got like a commission code for that, because I will always suggest that one. Because even if you, like Dawna's been in business for 13 years, even if we're upping our rates, if we say, hey, like we've been at this rate with Blue Cross Blue Shield for 7 years, I want to ask for a rate increase, this is a great place to go. It is a fantastic resource for you guys. One thing though, before you're starting, is to look at your area. We are in a very rural part of Florida. And so cash pay for our clients is basically non-existent. We live in a place where not only do our clients depend on their insurance, but sometimes maybe even need some assistance with deductibles and different things like that. So like for us, it would never make sense for Dawna to look at this and go, yep, where I am, I'm only going to be cash paid. In different areas and different populations, that may work, but knowing where, like what your population is going to be a big thing here. Being able to look in your area and see what are those payers? What are those insurance payers? What are those kind of like big industries that are going to send to me that I'm going to need to panel with? Like for us, one of our biggest switch from, like a Blue Cross Blue Shield to a CHP, that like we had never been a network with CHP, but now all of a sudden we had 20 current clients switching. So just kind of like, again, trying to figure some of that out before you start. Also kind of keeping a pulse on that as you're going will help determine like what panels you need to credential with.
And I think Annie brings up a really good point too, of making sure that you know the community and like what you're doing, because this can change. So like, 13 years ago, Blue Cross Blue Shield was like huge, right? And that's what everybody had. And now, one of our bigger employers, which is the prison,
Mhm.
they literally just switched to like a totally different one.
Mhm.
And so we had to like do all the
Yep.
credentialing and do all the things for that. And so just making sure that like, just because you pick one now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we don't need to reassess. Like if you notice that your referrals are coming in and you're seeing that there's a specific
Mhm.
one, that may be something to also keep in mind.
I think also too, looking at your client demand and looking at your business setup, if you are one that says, hey, like I have a heart for interns and I really want to set my business up to be able to give them the experience and to give them kind of like that caseload where they can actually bill insurance, knowing what's allowed in your area.
Mhm.
You know, like for us, that meant Medicaid.
Mhm.
You know, and that wasn't just a small piece of our practice. That's like at this point, at least probably 50%. And so not only clinician wise, business model, did that make sense? Also client wise, that made sense.
Yes.
Again, reimbursement fit, looking at your contracts, knowing like if I have, you know, Cigna is one of the ones that is just historically low. If I have an area for that, if I'm looking at that, like what is that going to mean business wise for me? How am I going to sustain this if 100% of my clientele is well below the average rate? So just kind of like being able to think through a lot of those models will help kind of determine that too.
And also like session length that you have mentioned on here. There are some that actually they don't want to cover an hour session unless it has a specific diagnosis. So like just even like going back to those contracts and knowing, hey, like if I may see that, you know, they're going to pay me $30 more an hour, but I can only get that if I am, you know, treating PTSD.
Sure.
So, you know, just making sure too of like what that really means for reimbursement.
Sure. Telehealth roles, I know, you know, a lot of that is a lot more universally covered than it was in 2020 when we were just kind of like winging a prayer.
We had to learn it. Yeah.
But also knowing like for us in Florida, a lot of times there's a lot of difference in their coverage or what the patient's responsibility is for in-office versus telehealth. Like I did an insurance verification call today for like a $80 copay in person, but a $0 copay for telehealth. So if I know that that is going to benefit my clients for sure, then that may be some different things that I want to change, you know, from not only my business model, but making sure that like for this, they require audio and video. So making sure that like I'm following all of the different rules and all of the different things to make sure I'm in compliance with that and can be in compliance and stay in compliance for that insurance company.
And of course, the last part is admin burden. So I am very blessed because I have an admin team that loves to call and do authorizations. And so again, like, you know, those take a long time. I mean, Annie was doing them this morning and I literally feel like she had like two phones going and was typing as she's waiting for somebody to answer. And so again, like as a clinician, like I don't have time to sit there and do that. But it needs to happen. And I think the biggest mistake that I will tell you at the very beginning is I just went on portals and was like, oh, their insurance is active. That's great. And I would start seeing them. I would go to bill it and like something would come back wrong with it, whether maybe my NPI wasn't connected. And so, yeah, they were active, but for some reason there was a glitch in the system, or maybe I read availability wrong. And so I should have been charging them $40 and I thought it was $0. So our protocol is we call the first time every time. And so thinking of like how easy is that? Some of them are easy.
Sure.
But some of them you're going to be on there for a while.
And if I'm, you know, looking and I say, hey, like you know, I'm only Medicaid, so my clients don't have copays. I've eliminated a big part of my admin burden there.
Yes.
If you guys are on your own and you're setting aside one day for this, or you're setting aside certain times, knowing that like, hey, for this service or what I'm trying to credential for, these payers actually don't ever require authorizations. Again, you've eliminated a huge section of admin burden there, not only for your admin team, but if that's you. If I'm looking at this, like we have one insurance payer and I swear it takes forever for them. I'm like 90 days, but I'm like, if I had more than one client with that would not be sustainable. Like when we're running back billing and I'm like, hey, you know, for Cinderella over here, it's going to take past midnight to get her stuff. that's fine, but I can't have a caseload of Cinderellas where I saw you in January and I just got paid.
Yes.
So also kind of like knowing that like these are going to be my quicker, more responsive type things can also kind of like help you go, actually, like this doesn't make sense.
Right.
I have fought with this insurance and fought with this insurance. You're not giving me rate increases.
You're paying me every 90 days.
Yes, the documentation requirements are wild. This is like 2% of my practice. Like, peace out.
Yeah.
Like, we've definitely had providers do that. And listen, I will support, providers in doing that too, because at the end of the day, this has to make sense for you. Like, you have to be the one to be able to do this. So one thing that I will say too is like knowing, like, I think a lot of times we throw the net out and it's just kind of like we threw it out there and we forgot about it. We don't know when we're checking back in. We don't know what we're checking back in on. So kind of like creating a cheat sheet for you, creating kind of like a guideline for you will help a lot of the confusion and a lot of the missed things. So many times when I have providers who are running into issues here or running into errors or we're then having to go clean up, or things are just being missed. And it was like, hey, I did the application and I submitted it. I got my confirmation. I printed it and put it in a file, but I never followed back up. I didn't know I had to.
Right.
Or I thought such and such was following up. So definitely kind of like having a pathway. This is where I'm starting. As things go awry, I have some backup plans and different things like that. But this is where I'm starting. This is what I'm doing. And this is the support that I need kind of in there. I've got my foundation laid. I know exactly what insurance companies that I can kind of sustain long term. This is what I'm going to start with. Then once you get that, also knowing like, hey, this is my contract. This is the kind of contract that I have. This is one thing that I see, and I wish there was a different maybe name for this, but group contracts can mean a lot of different things.
They can mean a whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't always mean because you're a group.
Yeah. So for us, I think of United. United is one for like 6 years that we fought with. We've always pretty much met the requirements to have that elusive unicorn group contract with them. We have a medical provider. We have a Medicaid coordinator or a medical coordinator there. We have a prescribing. Mm-hmm. We have the certain number. We've asked and they're like, hey, yeah, you meet the requirements, but try again. So we're listed as a group. We're listed as a group of individually credentialed providers, but that means when we get a new provider, we have to go through the credentialing process, which again, with some insurance companies is really hard and really just
tedious,
dumb, to be honest. But I think a lot of times providers see that and they're like, oh, I have a group contract. So when I get a new one, I can just add them to my roster and they're set to bill. So knowing what kind of contract you have also helps you know what to do when you're growing or what to do when those providers may be leaving.
Yes.
We have some that I'm a little embarrassed to tell this story. But we had a provider leave and called to kind of like in the contract to give them the dates. And they're like, sorry, you can't do that. And I said, well, like, what if the provider dies? And they're like, they died? And I was like, no, completely hypothetical. But knowing like, is that on your business to do? Is that on that provider to do? Are you going to have to make up a hypothetical and give the rep a heart attack to be able to get that done? So kind of like knowing what you have, how to maintain that, and then what you need to do if you're ending it, if someone's leaving, basically what all that maintaining piece is.
Yes.
One thing that I will say is, especially, it's very easy to get in the process of doing all the things, right? I have my contract. It's been fine. I'm not changing anything. My billing is fine. But for some reason, someone who credentialed me 5 years ago, they got a letter asking me to just check boxes to say, hey,
I'm
everything.
Still here.
Yep. Here's my updated information. Here's the only thing that's changed. And that doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden now we see denied claims. In your cheat sheet, in your kind of like your plan that you're doing, not only do you want to get these contracts, but you want to maintain those. So if I know that my Medicaid renewal is every 10 years, I want that somewhere. Yes. I want that on a calendar somewhere. I want that in a starred email. I may want to write that on a bulletin board somewhere. I want to know when that is. If my Medicare revalidation is every 5 years. I want that somewhere. I want to know that, like, hey, even if I'm assigning it to someone, if Dawna's assigning that to me and for some reason I'm not here in 5 years, still needs to be on hers because my calendar may not be there. So if it's on hers, oh my gosh, this is coming up. Also, if it's coming up on like October, I may want to take care of that in August.
Absolutely. In case there's questions.
Sure.
Because there's always questions.
Sure.
So yes.
So making sure that, like, no matter who is helping you with that, as the provider, again, you are the custodian of all of that. You can just say, hey, did you do that? Can you send me proof of that you did that? Rather than, oh my gosh, it's tomorrow and we forgot to do that.
Right.
So this is something that kind of has come up a little bit more recently and maybe needs, like a little bit more just attention to.
Absolutely.
Is knowing that contract.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if I'm a biller and I'm calling, even if I'm calling about billing claims, denied claims, that's where they're going to send me. If I call and I say, hey, you've paid me wrong for this, I don't think this process, like according to your guidelines, they're going to send me back to my contract. So if there's a billing question, if there's a rate and fee schedule question, going back to your rate and fee schedule in that contract, which again, a lot of times is Appendix D, but finding what that is and knowing what that is before you kind of like agree to that.
I think that's a big one because sometimes we don't like, and I'll just say this. So we had one that randomly paid us $1 less.
Yes.
For 3 years.
Forever.
And didn't notice it. And then when Annie came on, Annie was like, why is this? And I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was actually wrong. And so they actually did, Annie spent lots of Excel sheets, but they did actually go back and end up paying that and correcting that. The other side of that is we have seen people get overpaid and not say anything. And then they go back years and claw that money back. So you definitely want to know what that rate and what that fee schedule is, and going up back to that effective date. Like when did it start? When were you supposed to be billing? Because sometimes you can bill and they'll let it slide through, but maybe it wasn't supposed to. So making sure that you are aware of those things as well. And then of course the product line.
Yeah. So this is where a lot of times your commercial insurances have multiple lines that fall under that umbrella, that if everything does not match accordingly, it can be not only confusing, but costly. So we had a provider who was a Medicare provider and was in network with Medicare Advantage under United, and had updated things in Medicare and thought that they would translate to United Medicare, and it did not. And she got a clawback of like $2,000 to $3,000 just because of information that didn't match. So knowing under my United, what am I in network with?
Yes.
Do I want to do EAPs? Do I know what that process is? If I'm not Medicaid and Medicare, I don't want to have those boxes checked, because not only do I not want those checked, I don't want to be listed, because then I have clients call and say, hey, I found you on the provider directory, or I called the number on the back of the card, and they're filling out paperwork, and now you're sitting in the intake and we're like, hold on a second, you have United Medicaid? I can't do that. So definitely knowing, like, from the get-go, what you're agreeing to and what's included in that. Your covered services. Here's where this one insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield for Florida, for example, for our nurse practitioner for medication management telehealth codes, they just created their own. They created their own CPT codes, and it came out in, a provider
newsletter.
Yes. And so we just billed, and all of a sudden got denied claims, and they were like, well, no, duh, you're using the wrong CPT codes. And I said, I'm sorry, what? So knowing like what your CPT codes are, what your modifiers are, and anything special around that you're going to have to do.
And I think too, like, this is also that piece, like, as a clinician, like, do I have to send a coordination of care? And if I do, is that every quarterly or whatever that is? And I do want to plug berries in this part, because we do have to send it. And so it is really nice. Like, after I'm like doing my intake, I can literally say, hey, help me write a PCP letter. Bam, it's right there. It's really nice. And I can like just fax that over, because again, there's so many little nuances of letters and coordination of care and things that we have to do that, like, that really helps.
Yes.
So
yeah, we love the
Yes.
assessment part of berries.
Yes.
And we're kind of talking, at the beginning that there are certain things to help you meet compliance pieces for insurance companies that berries is going to help you do. It's not like oh my gosh, I just finished a 10 client day. Now I have to go write all these things. That will actually help you do that.
Yes.
It keeps that record of it for you. And so like that streamlines the process for you.
Absolutely.
One of the big things that we actually talked about in Bill Like a Boss yesterday was the filing and the payment rules.
Yeah.
So if I know what my timely filing is and again, under certain product lines, United Commercial may have a 90-day, their Medicare or their Medicaid or something else may only be a 60-day. So knowing exactly when I have to send things to them and when I can expect, again, that payment from them. One of the big things I think too that is coming up a whole lot more post-COVID are these audit terms.
Yes.
Are the risk adjustments, are the audits, are the language that they're going to use, because if something is happening in a system that is outside of your fee schedule or outside of your contract, just because they paid it does not mean that they will not fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, for that Medicare provider under United, that was like 2 years later. So making sure that you know exactly what your responsibility is kind of under that insurance company, what their rights are then to either progress notes or, questions or risk adjustments and things like that, because they are paying, and then how long you're required to keep that after.
Yes.
So this is kind of like that enrollment piece that I think a lot of people miss. And if you kind of notice at the bottom, Dawna mentioned this earlier, verifying benefits. I had a provider yesterday and she said, I will be honest, I was checking like once and then I never checked again, or maybe I just checked that they were active. This is where, again, like if you have ever had your NPI linked to anyone else, you want to know, hey, in my current position, in my current kind of business identity, can I see this member and can I bill for those services? You definitely want to make sure that from start to finish, in the middle of that process, that someone in that insurance company is not checking a box to revert you back to an old one. You want to make sure that all of your information matches every system that they have.
So of course, like when we call, we specifically say, hey, can Dawna Haswell NPI see tax ID with this tax ID?
Yep.
See Annie Day with this member number? Because again, if I'm working in several places, I can for, Kym Tolson, but I may not for New Dawn New Beginning. So again, just making sure that you are doing that. And then we do check it every month. So at the beginning of every month, we run a report and we check to make sure everybody is still active.
Yep. And a lot of times they will, like, I think they're starting to learn. They're seeing things like, give me your address. Yes. What is the servicing address? So don't kind of submit that claim and go, oh, I'm submitting it on a wish and it came back and it's, confetti and magic. It's not luck. There should not be anything questionable about that process. You should have your credentialing done, your contract signed, and the billing set up so that way you're expecting that to come back. You're not hoping for that to come back.
Absolutely.
Again, we've kind of talked about the difference in knowing what kind of relationship that you have with that insurance company. If I'm a group, do I still have to individually credential those new providers? If I'm calling and I say, hey, we've had this too. You wrote a check to Annie Day, not a New Dawn, a New Beginning.
Right.
I need to fix that. Knowing what those demographics are, and as much as you can, keeping those the same. I get it. I get that you have to move and things change and you're having to update things, but the least that you can do that, or the least that you can do that from the beginning, if you're in the middle of this or you're on the fence about what you're going to do, streamline that from the get-go, from the very beginning, because that also tells that insurance payer, hey, this is what I'm sending you. This is how I'm sending you. This is how I expect my payment.
Absolutely. And then again, just like we kind of mentioned earlier, those payer specific routes, like some are going to come back through portals, some are going to come back through your clearinghouse. But again, knowing how can I go check to see where all of my claims are and the status.
Yep. If I'm a business owner and I say, hey, where did we get that check from? What portal does that come to? There should be an answer for that. So again, this is where your maintenance is so important. It's where you know where that maintenance is coming from, what your responsibility is in that. Even like CAQH, I know a lot of times are like, oh my gosh, yeah, I got the email, but I was busy and I never just went and attested. You gotta go do that. As our clients that are coming to us, they have to do that piece for them. We have to do that as providers. So just knowing that, like, when you're updating that, you're also covering yourself for liability. The license that you have in there is current. Your liability insurance is current. If a company says, hey, we'll actually just look at that for you, you don't even have to do anything.
We'll just pull it right out of your CQH.
We'll just access that for you. That's the recredentialing piece that, if it's right, that's less work for you. Mm-hmm. And then as people are finding you, as those clients are finding you in those directories, they're coming to the right place. We've had some say, hey, Blue Cross Blue Shield had an address from 2 years ago listed. You guys aren't there. Yes. So you guys can do this. We never want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to kind of create things for you that are easy, that are manageable, that again help eliminate some of the stress going forward.
And again, this is like a quick little snapshot of like a way to like kind of just implement that in 30 days and stay organized. You obviously don't have to do exactly what we did, but we just thought that might be helpful.
Yep.
And then of course it's us.
That's us.
Again, like I know we talked about at the beginning, we are with Bill Like a Boss. We have an amazing group. Mm-hmm. Annie meets every Wednesday and answers all the questions that you can possibly imagine. And so we try to do little webinars like this and things like that to kind of help.
And sometimes I'm going to have to go do some research on that. So if you will just drop your email in there, I will try to find what I can and send it to you.
Yes, absolutely.
And we have a full training portal. We have all kinds of pre-recorded webinars we've already done before about like secondary billing and how to bring interns into your practice. And there's just a ton of information in there. But you get Annie live every single week too. So we'd love to have you join us.
You're stuck with me.
Yes, we love.
She's amazing. So you guys, we do have a bunch of questions. I don't know how much time you have, but I answered some of them, but I just thought it'd be better to leave them up to you guys.
Yeah. Do you have some that you want us to look at, Kym?
Can you see them, or do you want me to read them to you? Either way is
okay.
So for that first one, Melissa, if you're leaving that group, kind of starting your own, 9 times out of 10, you will have to do a new contract under the new, like your independent information. So like I'm under a new Dawna, new beginning. If I wanted to start my own practice, I cannot take any of the contracts that I currently have with me.
Correct.
I have to get new contracts. United will let you kind of do like a tax ID update for certain insurance contracts, not all of them.
But most of the time you have to start over.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would kind of like, for that one, I would prepare myself to have to do new applications.
Yeah.
So yes, if your ERA or EFT enrollment hasn't been set up, and some insurance companies actually will make you do like one paper check before you do your EFT.
But yeah, if your ERA and EFT is not set up, you will get a paper check.
Yep. And sometimes even in between, like if you've done it and it says, hey, this takes 4 to 6 weeks, don't hold your claims, continue billing. Just know that like in between then, or if some kind of get lost in translation, there should be a paper check for that.
So the next one was like, what determines to tell a provider if they're closed? Is it location based, not being in a group? So it really just depends, to be honest with you. We have some that do require medical provider or like director.
Yep.
We have some that they're going to say that you have too many providers in your specific area or your specific expertise. Yep. So really the best option is, before you even begin to start, is to call and ask exactly like what is open.
Yeah. And I would, when I call, just say, hey, is your panel open? I have an LMHC or an LCSW. We're wanting to do outpatient mental health therapy. Are you open?
And then the next one is, if you're launching a group practice, do I need to be credentialed separately from the group practice?
So like when you're doing that one, Melissa, it's basically going to be the same process. You're just going to enter in that NPI too. So basically what you're going to do is tie yourself as an individual provider to that group.
So like I'm a new Dawna, new beginning, and then I'm tied underneath that.
Yep.
So like new Dawna beginning is credentialed, and Annie has connected all of our NPIs to that tax ID. Do insurance companies allow the PO box for mailing?
Yes.
Not for service.
Yeah.
So you do have to have a service address, but for most of them, you can still put a PO box.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we answered that one.
That
Yeah.
one. This one. Do you have any advice credentialing with Medicare and Medicaid to help reduce the timelines?
One thing I will say about those two is just to know like what all they're going to ask for and gather all of that before you start.
Mm-hmm.
Because like those are typically, if I mess up on lines 3, 5, 10, and 20,
yeah,
they don't send it back and say, hey, fix these 4 mistakes. They stop at line 3.
Yeah. And so they literally will not do the whole application and send it back. They will stop right there.
Yep.
And then send it back, and then they'll go to line 5, like, nope, and then send it back. And so,
yeah,
again, I always try to find somebody that's done them.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a cheat sheet.
Yep.
And they can kind of show you how to do that. But yeah. If a solo practitioner bills as an individual but now needs an MPI-2, how do they apply for one? Does an MPI-2 need to be associated to a business name to distinguish them from their rendering? So your MPI-2 needs to be associated with your business name.
Yep.
Yes. So let's start with that one. Like, yes.
So like we have some will say like, hey, I'm Any Day MPI-2, but maybe I start Any Day Psychotherapy LLC. Like you can do something like that, but you can't have your MPI-1 and MPI-2 tied to the same thing, if that makes sense. It kind of has to have that business structure, even if it's just a little bit different, kind of has to have that structure tied to that. Mm-hmm. Dawn, that's a great question for copies of your contracts. And that if you can't find that, if whoever credentialed you can't provide you that, you should be able to call. Mm-hmm. But I always suggest in getting those, even if I call and say, hey, I've been in network with you guys for 3 years. I cannot find this. I need that. Yeah. Here's my information. Where do I go? How can I get that information? Because again, not only do you want that provider contract, but you definitely want to be enrolled to get the emails and the updates from that insurance company as those provider newsletters are coming out too.
Yeah. And nurse practitioner. So we actually have a nurse practitioner on staff. And so, yes, she's credentialed underneath us. Yep. And so, yes, we have done that.
And we also, in our Bill Like a Boss, we did a whole webinar series, I believe, on billing for nurse practitioners.
We did.
Yep. Yeah. So kind of creating those crosswalks and knowing kind of business model, a couple of things wise, like what that means when you're adding that for your insurance company contracts. So yeah, you can find that there too.
Yeah. And so just a little bit about Bill Like a Boss really quick, because I think this is like the coolest part, is that it trains you to do it on your own so that you at least know what is happening. But if you don't want to do it on your own, you can still hire, a biller that can do it, but you're at least knowledgeable. So like I always encourage people to do it so at least you know it. Even if somebody else is going to be billing for you.
I always suggest, especially for like our providers who are just by themselves and don't necessarily have an admin team, I may not want to do any part of the billing or any part of the credentialing, but I want to understand it.
Yes.
So many of the horror stories that we hear is like, I was totally dependent on someone else to answer that for me. I didn't even know what to ask. We want you guys to know that process should always be transparent, because if I'm sitting in a session with a client who has a question about that, I don't want to have to depend on someone else or say, hey,
I don't know why.
Let me chat them, let me figure that out. I just want to be able to say, hang on, let me look. And we have some that say, hey, I understand this whole process. Please do it for me.
Yes.
That's fine. I just want you to understand that process.
Yes.
Also, I think the flip side of Bill Like a Boss too is like when you're in there and you know it and like, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've never seen this happen. Support me through this. You have that too. Mm-hmm. That's what our weekly kind of like billers meeting do. We look at things, we answer things. Sometimes I go, never seen that either, but I will see what I can find. I will help you kind of support you through that process as best I can, even if that means kind of being the bulldog for you. I like to say I go from Ariel to Ursula with insurance companies really, really fast, and I don't mind doing that.
Yes. So
yeah.
Kym, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I know we're like a little bit over time.
I know. Do y'all have to, I don't know if you want to answer more questions or if you just want to have them reach out later, or how you want to handle that, because there are some more questions in here.
I know that the replay is going out, and so I think you guys may be like doing some QR codes, or so maybe even including like some information for us too on like how you guys can find us.
Yeah.
We can definitely help you guys.
Annie does a like a free 15-minute consultation to see if Bill Like a Boss is a good fit. And then if you have like a quick question, she can answer that for you in there too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you. And
Yes, thank you so much.
Tall, we appreciate you, and we love berries. We talk about it all the time.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Use it and try it.
It was amazing. We'll send out an email with the recording and everything everybody needs. And it was amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank
having the
you.
community
Thanks
and
for coming,
supporting.
everyone.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.